Well, let's get some more analysis. I'm here in the studio with Joachim Bitterlich, who is a former German ambassador to NATO and former European diplomatic and security and policy advisor to the German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. Thank you very much indeed for coming to see us. The G7 is wrapping up tomorrow. Then the focus shifts to the NATO summit in Madrid. Clearly a very united front, as we'd expect in the face of Russian aggression. But beyond appearances, what substantive steps can we expect from the leaders at the G7 and then from the NATO leaders in Madrid?
Please, it's not only the Zeitenwende or the change of time in Berlin, but it's at the same time the change of time for NATO. NATO is coming back to its, let's call it, old-fashioned defense principles, forward defense. Therefore, we will have stronger defense stationed and prepared in reserve in order to protect the NATO members in the east, especially the Baltic states. This applies to Slovakia, to Poland, and to Romania. And therefore, there will be another step. For me, the most important is to step up the rapid reaction force of NATO from now 40,000 soldiers up to 300,000. This does not mean that all these troops will be stationed in these countries, but part of it temporarily, as long as the Russian threat is lasting, but there will be reserves, will be ready in the different member states of NATO at any case of any Russian aggression. That's the key, if you want.
So clearly what's happened since February the 24th is that what you're saying is NATO's had a pretty significant wake-up call.
Exactly. It's not only a wake-up call, it's a redefinition or coming back to the NATO defense of the Cold War. This is the key for me, in my eyes.
So it sounds like you.
In order to show clearly to the Russians, please, dear Russians, here are the limits. You have to stop here. And there is not any step forward on your side allowed. Please look at the Russian threats today against Lithuania because of Kaliningrad. Strange threats because the Russians had stationed the missiles Iskander before in Kaliningrad. They should come back now. They send it down to Ukraine, to the Ukraine border. And when you look at the same time at the mood in these countries who are afraid of Russia, of this new Russian threat at their border, it's normal that the alliance is protecting them. And therefore, the alliance had to come back to its old-fashioned forward defense.
A little bit late in the day, isn't it? I mean, it really took the invasion of a sovereign neighbour, soon to become, we imagine, a NATO member, soon to become a European Union member, for NATO to come to its senses and realise that people over there in Russia aren't quite so benevolent.
You're right. Times have totally changed. Perhaps the wake-up call, we understood the wake-up call a bit late altogether. I felt this Russian threat clearly latest from 2019, when talking in Moscow in a small circle with Russians, with other allies from France and from Britain. And there the Russians said to us, please, dear friends, act now or it's too late.
Help us decipher something. The German Chancellor, and you used to advise a former German Chancellor, tweeted today. He said, tough but necessary decisions lie ahead. He said that from the Bavarian Alps. What do you think he was getting at?
I think it's normal. It's not only a message towards his German compatriots, but it's a message towards the Russians and to others. Clear, we stand together, first of all, and we are ready to take even further decisions in order to stop the Russians. The Russians have reduced the delivery of gas to Germany, not only to Germany but to others too. And the Germans are preparing, let's say, perhaps themselves to a hard winter. But they are prepared to do it. And the Russians try to, let's say, to divide us in Western Europe. And the signal of Chancellor Scholz, as at the same time of his economic minister for the economy, Habeck, is we can't be divided, dear Russian neighbor. We will defend ourselves and we will even be ready to take harsher decisions from your side.
But given the cost of living crisis,
Yes.
given inflation, given so many domestic concerns, don't we risk simply dividing ourselves on this issue? And don't you think that the public in a number of G7 countries and others will reach a certain point where they say, well,
Fatigue.
I'm sorry for what's happened in Ukraine, but I can't put food on the table. And, you know, their priority be what happens at home.
But please, we are back, and I think politics should explain this to people. We are back in the deepest way of the Cold War. And a Cold War, let's say, even with concrete threats, going beyond borders. And therefore, I think politics, the Chancellor or his colleagues, have to explain this to the people. And I know there is perhaps soon a certain fatigue of a war. Well, Ukraine is far away. Ukraine is not far away. Go from Berlin. From Berlin, it's a bit more than 1,000 kilometers, that's all. Poland, it's a neighbor, the immediate neighbor. Lwów or Lemberg earlier in the Austrian time is just beyond the border of Poland. And the Russians are even reinforcing their allies, as Belarus, as an example, to give to them with the same status as in NATO, as we do it in the Western world, nuclear forces.
Let me pick up on something you said a little earlier on. You mentioned the arrival of winter. Okay, we're still 6 months away, but as winter approaches, and this is something that President Zelensky said today as well, more help is needed. What difference does winter make?
Well, it's a war in winter is nearly impossible to me.
But not
in
just for the
Ukraine,
Ukrainians, for the Russians
just for
too.
the Ukrainians, for the Russians too. And his hope is to end this war before the winter. But the Russians understand the signification of the arrival of winter. And a second winter for the Ukrainians will be harsh, harsher than the first one. And will be harsher for the Russians. And the Russians are, let's say, taking their reserves. They take reserves onto the front. And the pressure will be bigger and bigger. And for the Russians and for the Ukrainians. And therefore he is urging, let's say, let's find an end of this war before the winter.
But it will be a harder winter for the Ukrainians if they haven't got any gas to heat their homes.
Yes, exactly. Not only, but live under the permanent threat of bombing from the Russian side. See today's bombing against a supermarket in the middle of Ukraine. The Russians called this a military center. No, it was simply said
A shopping mall.
A shopping mall. And the Russians, let's say, try to mislead our information. Up till now, they do not succeed. But there will be a certain fatigue. It's normal on each side. And Zelensky is well feeling this danger. And the Russians see it, and they try with all their forces to divide us. And it's not the first time. They try especially to divide the Germans. Up till now, no success. And I don't think that Scholz and the coalition in Berlin will allow Russians to succeed.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Joachim Bitterlich, thank you very much indeed.
A pleasure,
for your time this evening.
as always.